Sometimes there's stories that arise to be told or retold that make us dive deeper. And this is one of those stories. It's the story about that king who had an only and beloved daughter who contracted a mortal illness, and physicians and magicians and wizards and shamans were brought from near and far, but no one could bring about a cure in the princess. But one day, one of the king's advisors, with great trepidation, came to the king and said, "Sire, did you know that amongst your people there are those who have a faith and belief that there is a garden, and in that garden there is a tree called the tree of life, which has fruit that are said to cure any illness." So the king immediately said, "Bring the leader of this faith to me immediately." So a messenger was sent to bring into the presence of the king the leader of this faith, the great and illustrious rabbi. Now immediately the king said to this leader, "Bring to me a fruit from this tree of life within 3 days, otherwise your people will suffer." So leaving the presence of the king, the rabbi went back to his house, where he was pacing up and down, whilst in between sitting to muse and meditate, when his only daughter came to him, called Rachel, and she said, "Father, why is it you are so troubled?" And of course the rabbi told what the king had said, but of course he said, "There is no one who knows of the way to get to the Garden of Eden, as we know that it is where the tree is situated." But Rachel said, "But Father, don't you remember that there are those present at this time on earth who are said to know the way to this garden? And it is said that one of these resides nearby in our forest." "Oh," said the rabbi, "of course, let us go there immediately." So the rabbi and Rachel, his daughter, set out and made their way through the dense forest to the simple hut where it was known that this old recluse hermit resided. Now, of course, when they knocked on the door of his abode, he already knew the reason why they came, but he nevertheless asked them what it was that they came to visit him for, and the rabbi related what had happened and what the edict was. "Oh," said the old recluse, "yes." And with that he went to his bookshelf and he took down an ancient tome. And when he opened it up, there between its pages was a leaf. Now the old man said, "This leaf is said to come from the tree of life." And taking the leaf, which was as fresh as though it had been picked from the tree just that very moment, and he handed it to Rachel, the daughter of the rabbi. Now both Rachel and her father were very surprised that this leaf was not handed to the rabbi, and he could not help but ask, and all the old hermit would say rather enigmatically was, "Because it is destined so." And he instructed Rachel to put this leaf under her pillow when she slept that very night. So, making their way out of the forest, it was necessary for them to stay at an inn, because it was too far for them to return to their house that evening. So, just as she had been instructed, Rachel put a leaf, this leaf, given to her under her pillow, and that night she dreamt. She dreamt that she entered a garden such as she had never even thought it was possible to imagine, filled with trees on each side, and in each tree she perceived there was an angel. So in her dream she inquired of these angels where could she be directed to the place where the tree of life stood. The angels said, "Yes, we can show you the way. But beside the tree of life there stands the tree of knowledge, and it is for you to discover which of these trees bears the fruit that can heal all ills." So indeed, this is what the angels did in her dream. And sure enough, they came to that place where there were 2 trees, identical trees, laden with fruit. And there Rachel stood, pondering, wondering which of these trees bore the fruit that could cure all ills. Which of these trees was the tree of life? And then, as she stood and looked at each of these magnificent trees, she noticed that in one there was a serpent, and of course all of her knowledge, as everyone knows, the serpent represents knowledge. So it was clear to her that this tree was indeed the tree of knowledge. So the one standing beside it could only be the tree of life. She immediately plucked a fruit from that tree, and she awoke. When she awoke, to her very great surprise, sitting on the pillow beside her was the ripe and red fruit that she had picked in her dream. Immediately she took this fruit to her father, the rabbi, and they hastened back to the city, to the palace, and asked to be brought into the presence of the king. Of course, when the apple was presented to him and was taken to the chamber of the princess, even before the apple was given to her, Her eyes fluttered, and she awoke, and as soon as the apple was passed to her and eaten, she was restored to full and complete health. When we dive deep and recognize and acknowledge all of the elements of this old story as representations of aspects of our self, we bring together that which is necessary for us to know and claim what it is there when we know that we know, and we know that we have the proper authority. Dive deep. Dive deep as we must do to bring together all the aspects of what has been discovered, each and every one to be aspects of ourselves. Every story, everyone's story. When we bring their symbols together, we know what it is that is there, or here, right here. When we know that we know, and we know that we have the authority. Dive deep. Dive deep. What is it in us that represents the tree of knowledge and its fruit? The tree of life and its fruit. Why was it that the leaf was handed to Rachel and not her father? All of these elements of this story lead us to the answer of what it is that's present when we know that we know.